And hey, you got to want it. You got to believe in it. And at the same time, too, the beautiful thing in life that's getting up each and every morning thanking God for seeing another day, your freedom. If you let someone take that away from you because you did a knucklehead move, 10 or 15 years, 6 years or whatever, they give you enough time to think, and then you get a second chance. Take the second chance and run with it. If you take the second chance, you don't take advantage of the second chance, and you're going to lose out again.
James, you got kids?
I have 2 daughters. And I have grandkids also, too.
You got grandkids?
I got grandkids.
Come on, stop it.
Yes, I have grandkids.
You don't look like you're about 42 years old.
I'm 55, I'll be 55.
You're 55?
Yeah, I'll be 55 at the end of this month. And so, like I said, I encourage anyone, everyone.
You're a good man,
right
James.
thing.
You're a good man.
Thank you so
I
much.
appreciate your encouragement.
Thank
but I tell you what, it's people like you and me that make the difference. It's you wait on all these programs. There's too much money pulled out for all the cost and all the things and all the buildings and all the salaries and things. But we got to just get out and do it. And part of my thing is the parable of the lost sheep. We just got to go after that one.
That's true. If you keep doing what you're doing, it's gonna go a long way. You know, just reach out to the same people that you reach out. You know, just the grace of God, I met you today.
God bless you.
God bless
Thanks.
you too.
James, I just really appreciate you. I love what you had to say, your message. It validates, makes me feel wonderful, everything that I'm working toward. And you gave me so much encouragement. But I got to tell you, when you referenced the parable of the lost sheep, when you and I were talking, I just believe that, you know, a lot of people are just trying to do so much, but I accept the fact that we might not be able to get but just one person. And if we can get with that one person and we can change that person's life and that person can go back to his family and change those lives, there's going to be future generations that we're going to affect. And so that's what we're doing. It's a grassroots level. It's real people like you. This is what it takes in this world. We just got to do the best we can for others. So let me just read this, James, and I appreciate you so much. It's the parable of the lost sheep, Matthew 18:12-14. If a man owns 100 sheep and one of them wanders away, will he not leave the 99 on the hills and go to look for the one that wandered off? And if he finds it, truly I tell you, he is happier about that one sheep than about the 99 that did not wander off. In the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing that any one of these little ones should perish. Well, that's what we're all about. We're trying to save people one at a time. The results might not be there in big numbers, but it's okay. One at a time is what we're here for. So God bless you, James, and thank you so much for that. Well, so that ended my day there, and then the next day I went in and registered and did some different things. But so the third day when I went back, I went to a breakout session, a workshop, I guess they call it. And I chose it because it was about correctional education. It was called Redefining Correctional Education, Georgia's Investment in 21st Century Learning. And the speakers that were the presenters were Dr. Melinda Dennis and Dr. Heather Corbett. And I got to tell you, these two ladies were incredible. And so they are doing things in Georgia. And Georgia is quickly becoming the model of correctional education. They have completely revamped everything the way they do it. And they talk about the 21st century learning. Both of these ladies are educators for their whole life. And they've been principals of huge systems and like superintendents of schools and things. And they are just really super qualified. But they're making the transition from the chalkboard to the cloud, to the internet, to the technology. But they did something really, really unique, and I like this. There's a book that was written by two Navy SEALs, Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. And the book's called Extreme Ownership, 12 Principles to Lead and Win in Any Situation. What they did was they used real-life military situations where they were deployed in Iraq and other places. And they talked about what they did to make decisions, teamwork, leadership. And there were 12 principles that they brought out. But each chapter, they gave real life stories of how they had to make these decisions. And what they did next was they then used situations and how to train people in leadership. And what they did in Georgia, Dr. Dennis and Dr. Corbett, they modeled their program to develop the correctional education, revamp everything by using this extreme ownership as a guide. And they have just smashed goals and things and reached things. And they're just doing incredible work there. And again, they got chosen to do this presentation today because they're one of the best systems in the country. And I totally enjoyed it. And they were wonderful. And one of the questions that I asked them was, do they sell some bottles of their enthusiasm and their passion that we can all buy? Because they really, really had it. And so I introduced myself to them afterwards, and they really liked what I told them about Right Thinking Foundation and the work that we're doing, teaching canteen spending, converting canteen spending to savings as a discipline that people can leave prison with, learning how to handle their money better. But mostly everything that I told them, they felt very, very good about. And I already got an email from Dr. Corbett at the end of the day offering her assistance in any way, and we're going to work together later and follow up. So this is just a wonderful opportunity for Right Thinking to try to move forward and reach the people that we're trying to reach with better thinking skills and education. So it's a wonderful conference for me. I'm meeting some wonderful people, and I just want to thank them again, Melinda Dennis and Heather Corbett, for just doing the work that they're doing and being so passionate to reach lives. They've gotten so many GEDs. The number of GEDs that are graduates in prison is just improved so much. They really know what they're doing, and they're fantastic. So thank you. Well, at the end of the day, at lunch rather, we had a big luncheon there sponsored by one of the health care providers in prisons. And the guest speaker was a very, very unique person because of his history and his background. And his name is Damon West, and he's from Beaumont, Texas. And I want to read you his story right now. Living with Addiction, a journey from incarceration to recovery. Damon West. The only athlete in the history of the NCAA to receive a life sentence and parole out of prison with enough life left to tell the story, Damon West has made the most of his second chance. On July the 30th, 2008, he was finally forced into sobriety through incarceration. Behind bars, he faced a new reality and severe consequences for his criminal, addictive behavior. Stripped of everything in life, Damon was a blank slate, sentenced to 65 years life for engaging in organized criminal activity for dozens of burglaries he committed while hooked on meth. Nothing in his privileged background, working in both Washington politics and at one of the largest Wall Street banks in the world, could have prepared him for a Texas maximum security prison. As an addict in long-term recovery with a lifetime of parole, this former college quarterback has learned from his own mistakes and the examples of others that his program of recovery is paramount to everything else. It would be the wisdom of an elderly inmate, correctional professionals, the love of his family, a program of recovery, and his faith that guided his path. Well, Damon is just one of the most interesting people I've ever listened to. He was just so inspiring to me. He speaks out about the horrors of addiction and shares how he recovered by living in Christ and humbly serving others. The article that I just read is just his basic background, but you can Google his name, Damon, D-A-M-O-N, West, and there's all kinds of stuff on the internet about him. He did a series of podcasts called Life on the Rock, where he was the guest, and his story is just amazing. Crystal meth was what he became addicted to, and he only used it one time, and he was addicted. He lost everything in his life, and the people that he was doing the meth with, they started to support their habit. They started breaking into expensive homes and he broke in and burglarized over 50 homes. And when he was finally caught, they had a trial. And, he came from a very good background. His father's a sports journalist. His mother, I think, was a teacher, or it might have been a nurse, I think is what it was. And, he was a star football player at University of Alabama. And so the trial came, and it was his first arrest. So they got expensive lawyers, and he fully expected that, he was in jail for 8 months. He fully expected that he was going to be able to get off with something light because it was a first offense. Well, his trial lasted for 5 days, and he said that was pretty difficult. But the jury came back in 10 minutes, and the judge sentenced him to 65 years. 65 years. And so that was devastating for him. And, that was, so he went to prison, and, what he talked about was what he learned in prison. And, basically he learned about addiction. He learned that he was totally powerless over his addiction and that only a higher power could help him. He spent a lot of time in the prison chapel, and he learned to stay close to God, to share God's love. He says that he owes everything to God, and that he uses the term God things, which are things that happen that are beyond our control. Well, a lot of other things he learned about. He says that, if you have a bad belief system, it's just going to take you that much longer to make changes. But he says that you can blossom anywhere. You can have a mindset change. He says you need to read. He never saw a guy who reads books in prison get in a fight, but he never saw people fight over a book. He had some clever things to say. When he got into prison because of his education, he got to where he worked in the law clerk office in the prison. And in Texas prisons, they don't have air conditioning very hardly anywhere in the general population. But there was air conditioning in the clerk's office, so that was a good thing for him. But he learned accountability and responsibility. And he said that the very best thing while he was in prison was that he was working, that he had a job. He wrote his own brief for an appeal, and the law firm that he sent it to was very, very impressed with the work that he had done. He trained himself in the clerk's office in the prison, and they said, we're going to represent you, and when you get out, we offer you a job. And that's where he's working now. He got paroled, and he didn't believe it when it happened. His parents came and told him, and he only served 7 years and 3 months. But he has 56 years left on his parole. And they've told him that if you ever are in jail or prison for anything else, you're going to have to go back and finish the 56 years. So what he's done with his life, he's become a incredible force, going around talking to young kids in schools and goes to colleges and talks to football teams and everything else. But he's a phenomenal motivational speaker. He's given his life to the Lord, and he's using it. And he's making a difference. He's really doing beautiful things. One of the things that he said when he was there, at the luncheon today, giving his talk, he came to the Serenity Prayer. And I got a lot of connections with him. I'll tell you, I introduced myself at the end, but he said the Serenity Prayer. He only said the first half of it, but I've been saying the Serenity Prayer since 1974, every single day. It's one of my favorite prayers. And I actually got it on a prayer card in San Antonio, Texas, when I hitchhiked to San Antonio, Texas years ago. So he's from Texas. He's got the Serenity Prayer bringing back. So God's doing some amazing things in my life. But let me give you the Serenity Prayer. He said it today. God, grant me the courage to change the things that I can change, the serenity to accept those things that I cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference. The second verse, though, is incredibly powerful. But God, grant me the courage to not give up on what I know is right, even though I think it is hopeless. Well, what a beautiful prayer. He says that the only things that you can control in life are what you think, what you say, what you feel, and what you do. And so he's learning a lot. He says you've got to give respect to everyone. The health care in prisons is better than on the outside, he said. but there's a huge price that you're paying for it. It's very expensive. It's your freedom.